Many of us are ferocious readers of current events and we keep on top of daily news stories. And occasionally, if that's the case, then usually there's a sentence that you pick up along the way that kind of sticks out at you and stays with you long after the book's done and long after the article's already been read. Case in point, I'm reading a book by Jack uh, Shitama. The name of the book is Anxious Church, Anxious People How to Lead Change in an Age of Anxiety. And this is the sentence that I ran across. It just kind of stuck with me. Anxiety is experiencing failure in advance. That has stayed on my frontal lobe for a while, but it's talking about attitude. This week, we have seen protests and riots and unrest kick off in a place called Kenosha, Wisconsin, after a police related shooting. And as if scripted, immediately after a justified, or it doesn't even matter if it's justified or unjustified incident involving the discharge of an officer's weapon, what usually happens are these three things: rioting, looting, and violence. The protests never really seem to end in some cities like Portland or Seattle. And this is last weekend. Denver had their own riots, and unless you lived in that area, it's highly unlikely that you even read anything about the Denver rioting in your news. You see, it was a group of about 50 to 70 protesters that assembled outside the Denver police headquarters, and they were calling for the abolishment of the Denver Police Department. Murphy Robinson, he is the director of Denver's public safety, and he said that the protesters, they brought weapons to the table, they had guns, they brought explosives, axes, machetes, and had one intended purpose, and that was to harm our officers. We've seen American city after American city erupt with hate and fear and racism in places like Minneapolis, Louisville, Ferguson, Seattle, Spokane, Charlotte, Austin, Aurora, Colorado, Oakland, Portland, Omaha, Los Angeles, and this weekend, of all places, Kenosha, Wisconsin. And next week, it could very well be Carbondale. It could very well be Sparta. It could be Chester. And the reason why we've practically become numb to these types of news stories is because these things, rioting, looting, violence, they've become a nightly occurrence in our nation. And much of what's written about of all this chaos is focused in on trying to blame someone else or something else. We blame Trump or slavery or Civil War wounds that haven't healed yet. Um, but even if we correctly identify who is to blame, would that actually stop the violence? I mean, I don't believe that it would. In fact, I don't think anything is going to stop the violence that we see in America anytime soon. So here's this other sentence that's been rolling around in my mind. If you remember, I said the other one was anxiety is experiencing failure in advance. The second sentence that has a hard time leaving my mind is this, and it says we have basically entered a period of semi permanent civil unrest. That sentence again. We have basically entered a period of semi permanent civil unrest. But why? In America today, we would much rather hate our enemies than to love them. The mainstream media has trained us to hate those who are on the other side, and they've done their job incredibly well. They've been stirring the pot for years, and now much of the population has been particularly primed to explode. And with such a stone stew cooking for so many years, it's inevitable that there will be some eruptions of violence. On Sunday night, it was Kenosha. This weekend, it may be St. Louis, St. Libory, St. Genevieve, or St. Mary's. We're literally watching the meltdown of our society, and that process is going to continue to happen no matter what the election says in November. I mean, for heaven's sakes, in 2008, we had an African American man serve as president for 8 years, and he couldn't bring our nation together. At the heart of what ails us as a country has nothing to do with race, has nothing to do with politics or social injustice or any type of issue with economics. You see, at the heart of our problem as a nation, it's a spiritual issue because at the heart of the problem is forgiveness, and forgiveness is a spiritual issue. I wish that we could learn to truly love one another and come together as a society. And what we've done is we've basically entered a period of semi permanent civil unrest. And the only way to bring unrest to rest in our society? Is it if our society and our culture and our country finds rest in our Savior, King Jesus? And now that lawlessness has been unleashed in our streets and new eruptions of violence will be easily sparked with each new incident that comes along. I'm particularly concerned about the upcoming election season. It's easy to imagine quite a few scenarios which would unleash widespread rage and fury. And I just wish that things could be different. Americans should not be fighting other Americans in the streets. And it deeply grieves me whenever I see it happening. If everyone simply treated others the way that they would want to be treated, we would see senseless police shootings and there wouldn't be rioting and looting in our streets. Unfortunately, the very basic values that this nation was founded upon were rejected by our society many years ago. And now we're paying a very great price for that choice. You see, we may not be able to change the 62233, but God can. That's why the vision of CFBC is to love God, love people, and try to live like Jesus. And we'd love to have you join us this weekend for any of our online services, 10:30 on Sunday morning. But we also have two opportunities for in-person worship at Chester First Baptist Church on the weekends. We have a Saturday night 5 p.m. service that you might be interested in. And while the weather permits, we'll be doing the drive-in version of that Saturday night service. And when the weather is inclement or it gets cold, then we'll just move things inside on Saturday night at 5 o'clock. But Saturday night, 5 o'clock is here to stay for the foreseeable future. Our other in-person worship service is on Sunday morning at 10:30. We would love to have you all along, and we just use good common sense guidelines, practice social distancing, and just come loving one another, and everybody's going to be okay. God bless you, and I'll be looking forward to seeing you this weekend at Chester First Baptist Church, where we love God, we love people. We're trying real hard to live like Jesus. God bless.